Hello, welcome to our video about price elasticity of demand. I'm going to recap our previous topic before moving on to our next one. So to begin with, let's look at where we are up to. So this relates to theme 1 in marketing and people, and then we specifically will look at income elasticity. But first, let's begin with a challenge. What is meant by the term PED? What is the formula for PED? State 2 factors influencing PED. And then if a product has a PED of negative 0.7, would it be a good or bad idea to lower the price? Explain your answer. So pause this video for a second, answer these questions in your book, and then move on. In regards to where we are at in our first unit, we are specifically within the market. And remember, we always need to make sure we are checking off our business guide. So we have previously looked at price elasticity of demand. So all of those letters, A, B, C, D, E, you should be comfortable doing. And we are now moving on to number 5, income elasticity of demand, which is YED. So these are our achievement objectives for this topic. We'll start by looking at the calculations. We'll look at different types of goods, interpreting these values and the factors that influence income elasticity and the significance for business. So in this topic, we are going to learn about specifically the factors I just talked about. So if you would like to pause this video, write this down because these are our guiding objectives. Okay, so income elasticity of demand is a measure of the responsiveness of demand to a change in income. So remember, elasticity of demand is about the change of demand in relation to the price of the good, but this relationship is between price and demand with a change in somebody's income. So the law of demand states that when the price increases, the quantity of that good or service would decrease, which is true, but there is other factors involved. So income, for example, is one of those factors. So is it true for the relationship between income and demand? So let's have a think about, if your income went up, what products would you demand more of? And would you demand less of anything? So maybe have a chat with a partner about what you would do if your income went up. What would you demand more of and what would you demand less of? Please write this word down, income elasticity of demand, in your word glossary or your flashcards. It is an important definition that we need to know. So income elasticity of demand can be negative or positive. For example, income and demand could move in the same direction or opposite directions. So when demand for a product increases, when income increases, we call this a normal good. So please write this word into your glossary as well, normal good. Normal goods will always have a positive income elasticity of demand. So we use a positive sign. Then the opposite is true. When demand for a product decreases, when income increases, we call this an inferior good. So inferior goods will always have a negative income elasticity, so a negative sign. So for example, we earn more money, we no longer need to buy budget water or just normal water. Maybe we end up buying sparkling water with minerals. Okay, so because our income's gone up, we no longer buy inferior goods. We might buy more luxury goods or normal goods. So please add these two words to your word glossary list. So the calculated formula for this is a percentage change in the quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in income. So for example, let's say that our incomes increase by 15%, and this leads to an increase in the demand for iPads by 20%. So we take 20 demand divided by 15 income, we have a positive number of 1.33. So this tells us that the demand has gone up also while income has increased. So let's look at another example. Glorious Glamping is a luxury holiday site set in Yorkshire Moors. The average UK income has increased by 5%. Demand at the Glorious Glamping increases from 2,000 nights per year to 3,500 nights per year. What is the YED? So figure out what's going to go on top, so the percentage change in quantity demanded. Now this is a little bit of a trick question because you've been given the change in demand but not the percentage change. So you first need to figure out the percentage change here. Then you've already got the percentage change for income, which will go on at the bottom, which is 5%. So pause this video now, write this example down in your books and figure out the answer. So here's another activity to complete, please. So we could conclude that the coefficient, this is the number that tells us whether it is inelastic or elastic. If it is -1 and between +1, we call this income inelastic, which means that the demand would change at a lower proportion than the change in income. So just have a think about what that means. And then if it is greater than -1 or greater than +1, we call that income elastic. So this means that demand changes at a higher proportion than the change in income. Okay, so for each of the following coefficients, state whether they are income elastic or income inelastic. So pausing the video now, writing this out again in your books, it's important information, and having a go at those questions. So just like we looked at in demand, there are factors that influence this. So income elasticity is determined by whether the good is a necessity or a luxury. So at higher standards of living, increased consumer incomes will see a demand towards luxury goods as demand for necessities is satiated. So because we've already got enough necessities, we then start to spend our money on more expensive items like luxury goods. Okay, so necessities, food, shelter, water, clothing. Once our standard of living increases, we start buying more and other things that we don't really need but we want. So we call these luxuries. So necessities have a YED that is between 0 and 1. And luxuries have a positive YED that is greater than 1. But remember, products that have a negative YED, i.e. less than 0, are an inferior good or service. So the lower the level of income, so poorer consumers, they will tend to spend their money on necessities. And then as they become wealthier, they can start buying other goods. So normal goods are necessities that will have a lower positive YED. And then luxury goods, for example, cars and holidays, they will have a higher positive YED. So summarize this slide in your own words in a way that you can understand it. Maybe you want to make a table or add to your table or a mind map, but make sure you know what necessities are, luxuries are, and what the coefficients are for these groups. And then in connection to business, wealthier countries are likely to have consumers with higher disposable incomes. So this means people have more money to spend on other things, not just necessities. So they can start buying more luxury goods. So therefore, firms would produce more luxury goods to meet that demand. And then as global standards of living increase, we would see overall an increase in the demand for luxury goods and a movement away from inferior goods. So firms will identify the state of the economy, depending if we are in a recession, and they will make goods to meet the demand of their consumers. So in summary, a normal good will have a YED less than 0. Increased income leads to a higher demand. Luxury goods, less than 1. Increased income leads to a bigger percentage increase in demand. Greater than 1. Inferior goods, YED, will be less than 0. So increased income leads to a fall in demand. So for example, cheap substitutes like supermarket coffee. So here's a little scale for you to see the comparison between PED and YED, both elastic and inelastic. As you can see, the scale is similar, but there's a little bit of a difference. So in pairs, take a turn to demonstrate your understanding of PED and YED based on the scale above. And where possible, support your explanations with relevant examples. Make sure you use the key terminology, including substitutes, necessities, luxury goods, and draw this in your books or make a poster for the wall. And then you can add symbols in too, so adding luxury goods and normal goods into the diagram so that you have a better understanding. So in this topic, we've learned about the calculation of income elasticity. We've learned about interpreting the numerical values. We've learned about the factors that influence demand and the significance of income and demand. So a quick knowledge check. It's time to show that you know. Answer these questions down in your book, and then we will have a discussion as what the answers are to see if we have got it correct. And lastly, just some final revision questions. Define demand and list 5 factors that determine demand. So this is going back a couple of topics. Define supply and list 5 factors that determine supply. Number 3, what is the formula to calculate PED and YED? What are the factors that affect PED and YED? Why are PED and YED important for businesses? And lastly, what are the limitations of PED and YED? So thank you for listening. Hope that was helpful. Any questions, come and ask me or send me an email, and I'll see you next time. Bye.